Hey everybody, welcome back to the next installment in our series of 100 essential jazz standards that you need to know. So in this episode, we're going to be taking a look at one of the greatest jazz standards in the jazz canon, written by one of the greatest composers who ever lived, Duke Ellington. And the tune we're going to be looking at is In a Mellow Tone. Now this tune is really near and dear to my heart because of the way that I learned it. The way that I learned this tune was literally sitting in a room with the great, amazing, legendary Clark Terry, and he actually taught my friend and I this tune by ear. So this is a tune that I've always loved playing. I always call it on gigs, and this one is an essential. This is a must-know composition. The chord changes are just wonderful, and I also love the melody. So make sure you go and learn the melody as well as the harmonic analysis and the chord changes that we're going to learn here today. This tune is not all that complicated. A little bit of work on this is going to go a long way, and it should be fairly easy to memorize. So without further ado and more talking from me, let's jump into the harmonic analysis of the chord changes and the etude that I've prepared for you. Okay, so let's dive into the harmonic analysis here. This tune is pretty simple. It basically goes through two keys. We've got the key of A flat, and we've got the key of D flat major. And as we've seen in a bunch of our other jazz standard videos, this is a very common modulation. We go from the key of the 1 to the key of the 4. Other than that, it is not too complicated. There's a couple spots we'll have to talk about a little bit, but it's relatively simple. So in the first 4 measures, we have a 5 of 5 to 5 to 1. Now, we've talked about this 5 of 5 before, but basically what differentiates this from a regular 2-5-1 is that the 2 chord, instead of being minor, which would fit right into this key of A flat major, it is a dominant chord. So we have to call this the 5 of 5 because technically it is not a 2 chord, even though this chord progression functions basically the same way as a 2-5-1. So if we listen to that again, 5 of 5 to 5 to 1. And it just gives it a little bit of a different flavor from a regular 2-5-1. Okay, moving down to measure 5. Now we have a 2-5-1 modulating to the key of the 4. We have a 2-5 in the key of D flat. 2, 5, 1. Now, in measure 9, we stay in the key of the 4, but we turn the major 7 chord into a 6 chord, and then we have a backdoor progression back to the key of A flat. Now, if you don't know what a backdoor progression is, I'm not going to really go into depth here, but basically it's a flat 7 chord to 1. We've seen this already in a bunch of the standards we've covered in this series so far. But if you don't know what the backdoor progression is and you want a little bit more information, just search it out on YouTube or Google it or whatever. But that is how we're getting back to the key of A flat here. And then we're going to extend talking about this phrase all the way until measure 16 because it really all fits together. So we're in the key of the 4, we do a backdoor progression back to 1, and then we have a turnaround in the key of A flat. So we go to the 6 chord, then we go to the 5 of 5 again, and then we go to the 5, and then we're not going to resolve back to A flat, but we'll talk about that in a second. Notice that this 5 of 5, 5 is really spread out here. So instead of taking up only 2 measures, Duke Ellington spreads it out to take up 4 measures. So I'm going to start at measure 9, and we will hear all of that motion. So we've got the D flat 6 chord, then we go to the G flat 7, now we backdoor up to A flat, to the 6 chord, 5 of 5 for 2 measures, and then to the 5. Now this is a bit of a deceptive cadence. This is the first half of the tune, right? So now we're getting ready to launch into the second half of the tune, and we want to hear a 1 chord here. But instead what he does is he starts this process over again and does the same thing that he did at the beginning of the tune. So what this kind of signals to you is this is not the end of the tune yet. We still have a little ways to go. We have an entire second half of the tune. So we jump back into this 5 of 5, 5, 1 progression here. Okay, so that's what we call a deceptive cadence. So if I play the 5 of 5, B flat for 2 measures, and then I play the E flat 7 for 2 measures, we want a 1 chord, but instead we go back to the 5 of 5. Now you'll notice that measures 17 through 24 are exactly the same as measures 1 through 8, so we don't really need to cover that. We're doing a cadence in the key of A flat, and then we are modulating to the key of the 4 once again. Starting in measure 25 is where things get a little bit different. So now we have this kind of old school gospel blues progression. This is the same progression as we see in measure 5 and 6 of the blues, of the 12-bar blues. So you might recognize this sound once we hear it, but we got this really cool chromatic root motion that goes from 4 to the sharp 4 diminished, and then we resolve back to 1, but you will notice that we continue this chromatic root motion in the bass. And then the end of the tune is fairly simple. We've seen it already. We have a 6, 5 of 5, 5, 1. So let's hear what this progression sounds like starting at 25 with this really cool half-step root motion going from the 4 up to the 5. So here's measure 25. And then we go to the sharp 4 diminished. Then we go to 1 over 5 in the bass. Let's hear that again. So here's 4. Here's sharp 4 diminished. And here is the 1 over 5. Then we go to the 6. 5 of 5. 5. And then we resolve to 1. And that's really what's signaling the end of the tune, as opposed to here when we had that cadence that didn't resolve. Now we do resolve, saying, hey, we're at the end of the form and we can relax a little bit here. So now we want to look at this thing that's happening that's leading us back into the top. This is kind of cool. So basically, if you look, it's just moving down by half steps. But what you'll notice is if we move down by half steps, right at the end of the progression, we have a 6 chord, which leads us perfectly back into this 5 of 5 back at the top. So if I play this half-step progression going down, you're going to notice that it really pulls us back into the top for another chorus of soloing. So here's the 1 chord, then we move down to the 7, then we move down to the flat 7, now we're on the 6, and now we're going to go back to 5 of 5. So just a really genius way to get from the end of the tune back into the top. So you can see a pretty simple tune. I think about it as A, B, A, C. That's how I think about this form. You could think about it as just a big A, B, but these two, remember, these two sections are exactly the same, 1 through 8 and 17 through 24. So I like to call both of those sections A's, and then this would be our B and this would be our C. Okay, great progression. Let me know if you have any questions about this progression. If I didn't explain it well enough, ask in the comments below. All right, let's move on to the etude. So I hope you enjoyed that analysis. Remember, if you have any questions about these chord changes, just ask in the comments below. Also remember that you can get a copy of the etude in your key, and you can also get a copy of that chordal analysis sheet that we used by clicking on the link below this video. All right, hopefully you enjoyed all the stuff that we talked about today, and you're gonna go off and learn in a mellow tone. We'll be back soon with another essential jazz standard. Hope you're all doing well out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.